a fire near the U.S. consulate in Dubai due to a drone strike. Again, no injuries were reported there. American embassies in other countries are closing or reducing their staffs. The State Department urging Americans in 14 countries now to depart now, citing serious safety risks as panic does spread across that region. At least 6 American service members have been killed so far, with dozens more service members hurt. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office earlier, President Trump addressed the operation and claimed the strikes have decimated Iran's military capabilities.
They have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out. They have no air detection, that's been knocked out. Their radar has been knocked out. And just about everything's been knocked out.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Israel, where he's watching everything. Matt, this is such an active situation with attacks and counterattacks and retaliation happening. We're just hearing reports of another Iranian drone strike. I mentioned it in Dubai. What is the very latest?
Yeah, I mean, we're now seeing what looks like the second volley of missiles that was fired from Lebanon just in the last couple of hours. That's a new theater in this rapidly metastasizing conflict. As you mentioned, you rattled off, Kate, just a list of countries that are now facing Iranian counterattacks because they're hosting U.S. bases, or countries like Lebanon, which play host to Hezbollah, an Iranian-sponsored, really an Iranian group that has since decided to throw itself into the fighting by attacking Israel. It says in retaliation for Israel and America assassinating the Ayatollah Khamenei. So now we're seeing multiple countries throughout the Middle East affected by this conflict. It's unclear, Kate, whether the conflict starts there or whether it's going to spill over into further additional countries, thereby destabilizing even more of this already unstable region.
And Matt, we mentioned several U.S. embassies across the region are closed now, and that Americans in 14 countries were told by the State Department to get out, to leave. How are people supposed to get out if there aren't airlines operating, and what is the American government doing, if anything, to help?
Well, first of all, Kate, I mean, the American government, as in any conflict situation, has always maintained, and they do this always, they have been saying from long before, now is the time to get out. Ambassador Huckabee from the U.S. here in Israel had said even on the day before the invasion, if you want to leave Israel, now is the time to do it. I saw that when I was speaking to you a year or two ago in Lebanon, where the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon was saying, get out now before the Israeli ground invasion. They don't like being saddled with hundreds or thousands of Americans all of a sudden desperate to try to leave. That having been said, that still happens, and it looks like that's what's happening here. I can tell you what the policy is here in Israel. Ambassador Huckabee did release a statement earlier today saying that there are buses now available, organized by the Israeli Ministry of Transport, coming from points like here in Tel Aviv and throughout the country to Israel's southern border with Egypt, where he's advising people to cross by foot into Egypt and fly out of that country.
All right, that's a long trip, though. Matt, you spent some time earlier today with Israel's rescue and ambulance service, I know, to see how they're responding to these attacks that have been coming from Iran into Israel. What did you learn?
Yeah, it was a really fascinating look. I mean, this was a brand new facility built in a really just spanking new building that just came open within the past 2 years. Actually, it's hosting this new dispatch facility since October 7th. It is like any other dispatch center in any American major city, except it's deep below ground. It's just protected by these bomb blasts and thick walls. It can survive any conventional or non-conventional attack. It's that secure. And while we were there, we watched their high-tech system handling incoming missiles from Iran. It passed the message from the military to this dispatch center to the ambulance on the ground, all seamless.
So interesting. Matt Bradley, thank you. Matt in Tel Aviv. Let's bring in NBC News senior national security correspondent now, Courtney Kube. She covers Pentagon and military for us. Courtney, a short time ago, President Trump put out a post on social media saying that they will offer insurance and security guarantees for all maritime trade traveling through the Gulf, adding, if necessary, the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. Do we have enough resources in the region to continue to bomb Iran and then escort every ship in and out of the Gulf? I'm also wondering about what Iran said yesterday, that they would set fire to ships that tried to pass through. What do you make of this new statement from the president?
So yes, I mean, they have enough on land and at sea to continue this bombing campaign, frankly, at the same pace that they're at, and to do a limited number of escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, remember, it doesn't have to just be Navy. They could also use Coast Guard ships for that. They could use aircraft that would fly overhead of tankers and essentially provide them with aerial surveillance. And the U.S. could also bring more in. So this wouldn't be the first time that the U.S. has used or at least offered Navy ships to be involved in escorts. You'll recall when the Houthis were really threatening the areas around the Arabian Sea and throughout the Bab el-Mandeb and everything, the U.S. Navy was there essentially not escorting each individual ship, but providing sort of a presence or a patrol in the region to try to serve as a deterrent. It wouldn't be the first time, even recently, we've seen something similar to this, Kate.
And that is a real choke point. That strait is where 20% of the world's oil, I think, passes through there. Courtney, you also separately have new reporting on the phases of military operations that are planned in Iran and how things will unfold. What do we know?
Yeah, so they've already begun. They've already essentially completed the phase where they took out Iran's air defenses. They started off with essentially a standoff campaign. What that means is they're firing things from pretty far away to take out the kind of Iranian assets that would be a threat to manned aircraft, to the men and women who would be involved in these strikes. Once they got through the air defenses, most of them anyway, and they were able to take out some of the Iranian Air Force, that is everything from pocking up the runway to even targeting some of their aircraft, then the U.S. moved in with their manned aircraft, things like bombers, B-1s, B-2s. They have been targeting the Iranian missile program, but Kate, so far we have not seen any indication that they have begun to strike the nuclear program yet.
All right, Courtney Kube monitoring all that for us. Courtney, thank you. Let's bring in Kenneth Pollack. He's the Vice President for Policy at the Middle East Institute. He was also a former Persian Gulf military analyst at the CIA and has previously served on the staff of the National Security Council. Good to see you again. What do you make of the explanations we're getting today from President Trump about why the U.S. attacked when it did?
So, Kate, I think the administration is kind of tying itself into knots to justify the timing. I'll be honest with you, I don't think that the notion that the Israelis were somehow going to go before us was really meaningful. I think it was clear that President Trump had set his sights on Iran. He had made clear since he came into office that he expected the Iranians to come to the table to hash out a new agreement on nuclear weapons, on ballistic missiles, on their support to their proxies and allies in the region. He was getting no satisfaction from them. Obviously, after the 12-day war, tried again getting no satisfaction from them. And it seemed like in January, in particular after the Iranian popular revolt and the incredibly harsh crackdown by the regime, that he made the decision that he wanted to deal with Iran now.
And can we talk about, for folks who haven't, like you, been studying Iran for all these years, talk about the regime and the way their governing system works currently and what would have to change? I want to put up this graphic on the screen. This is sort of trying to help people understand who's still there, but you know way more than we do. Talk about what has been in place and what could come.
So it is a very convoluted system. It doesn't necessarily work the way that Westerners expect it to. The person on, if you look, you inner circle Ali Larijani, right now he's probably the most important man in Iran. And again, I say probably because we're not really sure. It is a very opaque system. But before he died, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, designated Ali Larijani to be the guy, in effect, running the Iranian government. Larijani is a conservative. He's close to Khamenei, but he's actually quite pragmatic. Not necessarily a nice man, but nonetheless, not a real firebrand, not a hardliner. He is, as best we understand it, the one who's running the government day to day. Now, everyone's focused on this three-man committee that was established to pick the new supreme leader. When Khamenei was killed, this is how the Iranian system works. They're out there. I'll be honest with you, we don't really know what they're up to. My sense is that they're mostly focused on picking the successor to Khamenei.
But it's possible that they're also getting involved in day-to-day affairs. This is why the system gets very complicated. But again, most of the evidence indicates they're just focused on who the new supreme leader is. Then, of course, there are all kinds of other folks. And the most important group that we ought to speak about when we're talking about the Iranian government, how it works and how it's working today, is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The Revolutionary Guard, this parallel military, highly ideological, they're very factualized too, but they are very powerful, and they could be pushing Ali Larijani in directions he might not otherwise want to go.
Ken Pollack, thank you for helping us better understand. Really appreciate you. Still ahead, we are following other